Are there any comments from citizens that we need to take before we go into the meeting? If not, has everyone had a chance to read the minutes that came in the packet? And any changes or corrections or omissions that anyone caught? If not, the chair will call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Well, motion to approve.
Yeah, move to approve.
Motion to approve.
Paul?
I called the question, yeah.
Oh,
Go
We gotta
ahead.
get a motion.
Okay, go.
motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Right on.
Deja vu all over again.
Yes.
New decade.
Unanimous. Okay. Thank goodness.
Do you want to go into the comments about the
Yeah.
pickleball and that we just had?
Sure, while it's still fresh in our heads. So, for the other park board members, we did just have an open house for the pickleball courts up at Anderson Park that Hudson Pickleball Association came to us a couple months ago and for their proposal, and at that time, park board approved it because it did meet kind of what was in the outdoor rec plan. At the council meeting for final approval, Councilmember Morissette was just concerned that the area adjacent residents didn't get a chance to kind of weigh in on it, so he wanted to push out a letter or an open house. So I did a letter, and based upon the comments I got back from that, I was like, well, let's just go ahead and have the open house. So that's what we just had. It was an hour long, started at 4:30. There was, some concerns about, the parking, the noise level, taken away from the neighborhood feel of the park. There's questions as far as why isn't it in Grandview, where there's more parking or White Camp, and it comes down to funding, so on and so forth. So I don't know, Paul, do you kind of want, or Paul or Pat, I mean, you guys were here for pretty much the entire extent of it. Do you kind of want to summarize or maybe just weigh in on your thoughts and where as a park board, as a city, where we should go from here?
I think my take from my own personal perspective of looking at it was that the general impression that was expressed by the neighborhood people was that it's a neighborhood park, which is intended more for foot traffic of neighbors and people who live around there to come over there and play and utilize the space, more so than a magnet area to bring people in from outside of there to utilize the space. And they brought up the impact that they thought it would have then on, with the new neighborhood coming into the south towards YMCA, is going to be a couple hundred or 100 houses or more going in there. With the number of kids that are already in the area, in the apartment buildings and everything else, this is their only real yard or place to play. So they brought up some really interesting points that I think have to be looked at in my mind and addressed in, is this a short-term solution to a long-range plan that makes more sense? And my thinking from listening to everything said that's more the direction. If it's going to be at Anderson, it should be looked at from that perspective, but a long-term solution that encompasses everything that pickleball have said they want to do, be able to hold tournaments and those kinds of things, that we've got to be able to come up with a better location. My personal feeling on it is all. But I think I was really pleased. There had to be 30, 35 people.
30 people.
Yeah, that was really good. To have neighbors be here at 4:30 to express their comments and talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. So first, I just want to thank the folks that came tonight, and then also Councilperson Morissette for pushing to have that open meeting, because that was important. Yeah, I would concur. I think my overall notes and thoughts are the neighborhood concept of a park is probably different than what we were looking at in terms of the pickleball courts. The size of that park, it came stronger to me that is just not a big park area. Mm-hmm. And by putting 6 additional courts, I think that is pretty much going to dominate the green space there, so I have some concerns with that. I thought the point about maybe looking at Grandview, or I guess I don't quite understand in my mind how, I know the funding thing with Paul Anderson is what influenced it.
That's what's driving it entirely.
That's what's driving it entirely. So I was trying to figure out why we gave up on Grandview as the location, because my thought previously was that that has more space and probably more parking, and in long term it might be a better location for those courts. So if it's strictly a question about funding, I think it's probably in our best long-term interest to think about how can we generate funding? And that could be through some of the Pickleball Association, but I also think that it's time we start talking about city money and trying to figure out what would this look like in terms of, you know, the budget cycle and moving forward. I know that's going to
But I
be
think the
frustrating
city's
to
point
the,
is we're anteing up the land. If they go out to Grandview, that saves them from having to go out in the township or anywhere else and buy that piece of ground, which
Yep.
is $150,000, $200,000 worth of land. If you had to go out and buy it from over in the Carmichael corridor anywhere. So I think that's the way the city looked at it, is we'd ante up the land as the place for it to go. We have all the infrastructure associated to those kinds of activities there. I think what derailed that and shifted it to Anderson, from all I can garner from the whole thing, was when Paul was gracious enough to say he'd
right.
make the donation. And that was what is driving that and behind it. Nothing wrong with that. It's not amoral. It's not, you know, doing anything special for anybody. It's just, it's a very nice thing that Paul's offering to do, and he's done that park. But in
And
the
the
context
question-
of hearing what the people were saying, they appreciate it very much for the type of park it is, and questioned if we were going to adversely affect that.
Yeah. So as I was listening, I was thinking, is there a possibility the city, we could talk to Paul Anderson and say, is there any way that you'd be willing to help fund it if it was, moved it to Grandview or another location? Does it have to be locked to that park? And you could rename the courts, you know, Anderson Courts or whatever. So,
I think the Pickle Association should do that.
yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think there's different ways this could be worked, but the longer I listen today, I'm more hesitant probably now than I was a few months ago about Anderson as a location, primarily based on the size of the park and the concept of neighborhood park. I think that's what came through strongest to me at the meeting. So
I agree.
I have some hesitation.
Yeah, and like I said in the past, Paul, there wasn't support from the city council to fund a pickleball facility. So, you know, from the city's money, we can't use parkland dedication funds because it wasn't in the original master plan, right? So our attorney will say that, you know, those funds aren't available for that, and that's why Grandview never went through. And the council wasn't going to appropriate any money in the capital improvement plan to build a facility. So, you know, the Pickleball Association was left on the hook to
No,
come.
I get
and
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
But I'm saying I think we could revisit that with Paul Anderson. I think we could revisit that with the council, looking at that. Because pickleball is it's still a pretty new concept, right? It's been 10 years ago, we didn't, it wasn't around, right? So I'm saying, how does the city respond to the needs of the community too? If there's a legitimate need and you say, this wasn't in there 5 years ago because we never heard about it.
Right.
But now, let's revisit it. So I think there could be pieces to this puzzle, but I like what you're saying too in terms of, Pat, in terms of, I think we have to think long-term, the best location for this.
Yeah.
And not just because there's the private donation here, which is great, but what's in the long-term interest of the city and what works for the community best, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And in one where everybody has a good time.
Yeah.
And that one group having a good time in that location doesn't ruin the quality or adversely affect the quality of life of the people who already live in that neighborhood. And I think everybody wants to accomplish that. I think that it comes down to money. The Pickleball Association is, in my opinion, and again, just my opinion, isn't willing to bite the bullet like every other association has done to come up with the money to build and have their facility. The tennis people do out, you know, by the old, across from the old JR Ranch, out by the truck stop. The hockey, soccer, Little League, every association has raised the money for their activity. And I really think that they could get the city behind it. Not the city dollars paying for it, but I think they could get the people who live here behind it with a fundraising campaign like everyone else did. I mean, they told us we were too small to have a Y, and Al Birchall and a couple other guys said, and decided we can do it, and lo and behold, we got one of the best in the metro area. I think we could do that with anything the people here in town want to do. The talent that's here is there to do it. I really do. I think
And
we can solve it with a Band-Aid for now. That may be, a little bit of expansion in one way or another out there, but I think a long-term solution is one that's got to work long range, because it's going to get more popular, and it's going to become a bigger magnet to draw people as it gets more popular. They're going to want to put on tournaments and do that kind of thing.
The thing I would say is I don't know enough about the Pickleball Association. There might be some reasons also in terms of numbers and other things that we don't know about in terms of the amount of money they could raise as well. And I also think I'm open to a partnership if there's some type of partnership that we could work out. It's going to take some time, but I think that there's different ways we could construct this puzzle.
Do we have anyone here from the Pickleball Association that would want to share their thoughts on
Deanne, you
the
want to?
where?
I'll let Paul share.
Okay. Sure.
Paul, would you mind coming over to the podium where the camera can get you and it can be heard? Yep.
I don't know if I like that. Well, at any rate, I've heard what everyone has to say about this project, and quite frankly, some middle road, I think, is in order, because the green space and so forth that's all valid. And I guess I'd like to propose that we build 4 courts instead of 6, and that way we wouldn't have to encroach on the children's activities and space. And granted, in 5 years you may be looking at another location, but there's nothing wrong with having 2 locations in Hudson, one
Absolutely.
to serve the south and then the other, the north end of the property. So at least this way, we get it off dead center. Zappa can begin construction in the spring, he said, if he gets the bid. I've talked with him about it. 4 courts would cost less money. I think 6 was going to be somewhere around 100,000. I'm assuming 4 might be 75,000. So we raised less money, so that's my recommendation. Any questions about that, or?
And Paul, can I just ask, would I love your generosity. I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
Would you be willing to, if there was a more suitable location for those courts, would you be willing to help fund that in a different park?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm kind of committed to Anderson Park.
Sure.
Partly because of the Anderson history here, and
Sure.
I live down the street, and so
Sure.
so I guess the answer is no, but I'm certainly willing to fund in the neighborhood. So
Sure, thank you, appreciate that.
sure. Okay, go ahead.
I guess in response to Pat saying that, we aren't willing to raise all the funds, we have been waiting for the city to give us permission to raise funds, and we have not gotten the go-ahead, and so we have not been able to start the process. I just was notified today that I have a $10,000 grant from the hospital for this. Grants I can go ahead with, but as far as going out and asking businesses, we can't do that until the city says, and we've been told by the city, do not start fundraising. So Pat, maybe we can, but if we don't have permission, we can't go and fundraise.
Yeah, I instructed a pickleball association to not start fundraising until they have a definite answer from council approval, and.
And this
just-
is before, too.
Yeah.
We've been told this before Mike was even on board.
Sure.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's a little frustrating. I mean, when you can't go out, you don't have that partnership, and yet now we're being told that we can't raise the funds. Well, it's kind of hard to do it if you don't have permission to do it.
Right. Yep.
in response to that, I think what I understood Mike saying, Johnson, in earlier discussions, was one of, the city has seen no proposal formal of any kind of what you wanted to do or to do at Grandview to sign off on, yea or nay.
I don't
Have
know.
you?
I think our original.
That's before me,
proposal
Pat.
had it in there. That's before mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as I understood it, that's what they're saying is there's, as far as I know, there's conceptual support for it going out at Grandview. And I think you heard from people here that they thought it was progressing, going that direction. And then the sidebar that came about was Paul's generous donation, and the energies and everything went there, because it also, in dollar-wise, is a path of least resistance to do that. But I think the city is still totally open to working with the Pickleball Association to do something out at a long-term project out at Grandview that solves the long-term need of everybody. And part of that was, we're doing our long-range planning now, and that would then be part of that process to go forward with it. The result of that would be then having enough information that the city can say, yes, the city attorney has signed off on stuff, the Pickleball Association is as well, but I think it's still too conceptual. But to my knowledge, and please all of you, if you feel contrary, that we've been behind it going at Grandview.
But we haven't been given that permission. We were under the assumption that we had to have you tell us that, okay, you will have a site, now you can go fundraise. And we have not been told that, Pat. In any of the meetings that I've been in, we've never been told that. So I guess that's why we haven't gone and started to raise money, because we thought, okay, we may not have a spot when we have this money, and what do you tell your people that you're,
Oh, yeah.
approaching? So
And I think that was what Mike was trying to say. I don't mean to speak for you,
No.
but I think it's something that to go forward, you should be looking at it, that we are willing and want to work with the Pickleball Association for a long-term solution to the need in the community. And then getting, the city will do its part, I believe, I'm speaking conceptually. The city would do its part. We've got the land there, we've got all the other infrastructure, we were planning on the pavilion, from additional bathrooms and everything going there. We're trying to create a perfect nest for you to grow and hatch that activity at. And I think we can work together to get it to the point where it has, there's no resistance to it. It can have its own momentum and carry itself to go forward.
Go ahead.
Mike is the only one who would know that. It'd be 2 years from now for bonding.
Well, I was just, I just want to ask the rest of the park board. I mean, kind of hearing the summary of what happened tonight. I mean, would the park board support giving up land in Grandview and dedicate that land like we dedicated land for Anderson Park for this proposal? Would you be willing to do that at Grandview to construct pickleball facilities there? I mean, that's a conversation that I guess what I'm, what I would recommend from a staff perspective is, we don't have to take action on anything tonight, but I guess what I would like to do is I would like to sit down with the Hudson Pickleball Association, kind of debrief from what happened tonight, discuss maybe the proposal of 4 courts at Anderson. Is that something long-term that they would like to see, or would they like to focus all their efforts at Grandview Park and And having said that, have the support of the board and the council to dedicate them a certain chunk of land out there so that they can go and get it done and have that support and have that write-off and say, that's yours. Go and raise the money, construct it. You know, and I think that's what, they ultimately just want a yes or no on Anderson or Grant, you know. So I that's my suggestion, is
I think we could very easily be at a place to be able to do that
yeah.
with minimal amount of hassle.
So can I ask a question? I'm sorry, I wasn't at.
No,
the
go
open
right ahead.
house.
No, that's fine.
Was everybody that showed up at the open house, the neighborhood, were they all opposed to it? Was there anybody in favor of it? And were they adamantly opposed to it? I mean, what was your feel?
I thought
go
they were opposed, I'm sorry, Pat.
No, I said, go ahead.
Well, I think they were opposed, I think they raised really good questions. I think it wasn't so much about the vehemency, but I think they just really raised good questions about what's the concept of that park. They see it as a neighborhood park where kids can walk to. They did some good research on kind of like some of our past city planning for parks. And I think they raised a question about Grandview too, because I think there was the sense that when I first joined Park Board, I know we went out there and took a tour of Grandview and we said, hey, this is where the pickleball courts
Yeah.
will probably go in the future. So they just kind of raised some good questions, sort of with the original vision in terms of where the city was going and do these fit this area? So
And I did receive some people in favor of the project that live nearby. You know, I did receive probably half a dozen emails supporting the project.
And
People that didn't come tonight?
People that
they
didn't come
just-
tonight,
But they
right.
were emailing saying that they.
Correct.
I
supported
didn't
it.
get
Okay.
from the audience
Came tonight.
that came tonight, I didn't get from them that they were against pickleball, that they were against what's currently going on. They weren't here to get it kicked out or, you know what I mean, that it wasn't a good activity going on in their neighborhood. What I took from it was, it's, as talked about in the size, was going to make it a bad fit to go there.
As it was proposed tonight. 'Cause
As
there's
it
a
was
vote-
proposed,
yeah,
yep.
The
And-
six court option.
And I think they had, you know, they brought up points that I hadn't considered as well, that, you know, it made a lot of sense. But again, I don't want to convey that they were against pickleball.
right.
They did not express, I didn't pick that vibe up in the conversation at all, or they were against the way we have been doing things in the park, and it was really an expression of size. Or is that the right?
Location.
Well, to feed off that, and I missed, I was only here for about 25 minutes, but, you know, you posed the question, 6 sounds too big, maybe we'll try 4. Some of the pushback I heard was parking. I heard some of the chit chat too that wasn't directed up here. Parking, kids running around, you know, people coming and going from out of the area. I don't know, I don't know. Is 4 small enough? Is 2 better? Is just 1? You're still gonna have parking with 4, 6, or 2, or whatever. They brought up the idea of maintenance, that the city would, if that would go to us or not. You'd still have that with 4. Again, not answering your question, but you might still have the same neighbors line up and say, no, I don't want 4 now. Didn't want 6, I don't want 4. So I don't know if just chopping a little bit off that layout is sufficient to have them accept it.
I think it's a valid point. A totally valid point
Yeah.
that you're making. I don't
Yeah, so let me.
think it's for us to resolve.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me regroup with the Pickleball Association and see what their feelings are following tonight. And then what I'll do is, this will probably be back on the agenda at next month's meeting for further discussion and direction.
Because I don't think the Pickleball Association want to make bad neighbors.
No.
You know, I
I
mean,
don't think
they aren't trying to come in and create waves or make it an unpleasant neighborhood. So I think they'll be able to work together and work it out. And in the first part of the meeting, when Mike was talking about the plan as it was drawn and what they were planning to do for parking and how that was going to be handled, that went over well in terms of solving those kinds of issues and correcting some of the problems that exist now. I think
we should look at
I think
that
we'd be-
off-street parking, even if we don't
Yeah.
put pickleball
Right.
courts in, my
Yeah.
opinion, but.
those things would make sense for the city to do and enhance.
And safe to say the people that were against it probably aren't pickleball players. I mean, if you play it, you're probably for it. If you don't,
Right.
not in my neighborhood type thing, so.
I see a question, and then we have to get done for the city.
We were talking about what happened, we were interested in Grandview at one point in time. Then I think the next thing that happened was the St. Croix Meadows option. That kind of came up,
Okay.
And,
That we would somehow bundle that in, that St. Croix Meadows would help fund some facilities type of thing.
right,
Money driven, yep.
So that was how it got diverted from Grandview to St. Croix Meadows
And then it was taken forever at St. Croix Meadows, and you're like, we can't wait 3 years, so then Paul, that's kind of how we arrived here. Okay.
Got that carrot out here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I hear you.
yeah.
We're finally able to reach it, but I understand totally where they're coming from. I get it. It's just extremely frustrating.
I don't mean to cut it off, but we do have a couple things we'd like to get, you want to get accomplished yet tonight?
No, just postpone them. No,
Okay.
it's
Does
fine.
anybody have anything for future agendas that we're going to be working on the master plan for parks?
Yep, so at next month's meeting, we'll cover each individual park again. I'll add Lakeview, not again, the ones that we didn't cover at the last meeting. I'll add Lakeview, we'll go through them all. Then that following meeting, I'll have all of our projects that we kind of decided on a Velcro board, and we can start prioritizing kind of what years we'd like to see these in, given a certain dollar amount, so on and so forth, so that we can wrap up that master plan here in the early spring. So, yeah, I mean, there's nothing that's on the agenda here that would needs action tonight.
Why haven't you guys had ice on the ice skating rink?
Pat, it's raining out and it's December 30th. I can't, and we're supposed to get rain on Thursday again. 40 degrees.
Basement across the street,
I just
Unbelievable.
can't win. I think ever since I've been here, we haven't had a 1 week of open ice.
It's just incredible.
Yeah.
I'd like to use them too, It's just,
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I've gotten a couple calls.
yeah.
And
So the plan is we're gonna try and start flooding next week and try to get something up and running,
Yeah.
following weekend. So that's kind of the plan, but.
they're like ants on the snow cone on Vine Hill.
Yep. Vine Street Hills.
The kids out
Yeah,
there.
that's for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Meeting adjourned.